Captain Jake Morrison stretched his legs across the command console of the cargo hauler Lucky Strike and tried to ignore the fact that his coffee tasted like engine coolant. Again. 3 months into what was supposed to be a routine supply run to Kepler Station, and the recycling systems were still mixing up the flavor profiles. Fantastic. Right now. Hey Cap, called Tommy Chen from the navigation station, his perpetually cheerful voice cutting through the hum of the ship's engines. We're about 6 hours out from Kepler. Want me to ping them with our arrival time? Sure thing, Tommy. And try not to sound so excited about delivering toilet paper and protein bars. You're making the rest of us look bad. Jake took another sip of his terrible coffee and grimaced. Rosie, please tell me you figured out why our beverage dispenser thinks Colombian blend means antifreeze with a hint of despair. From somewhere deep in the engine room came a muffled shout. Maybe if you spring for actual maintenance instead of duct tape and hope, we might get somewhere. Rosie's voice carried the kind of sarcasm that could strip paint. But hey, who needs properly functioning life support when you've got that winning personality? A series of grunts echoed from the cargo bay. Grunt. Their Zeloxian janitor was apparently having philosophical discussions with the cleaning supplies again. The 8-foot-tall, purple-scaled alien had joined their crew 6 months ago, and had yet to speak a single word in any recognizable language. Just grunts. Hence the name. Jake had stopped trying to decode them after Grunt somehow managed to fix their artificial gravity using nothing but interpretive grunting, and what appeared to be alien interpretive dance. Sir. Tommy's voice had lost some of its usual enthusiasm. I'm picking up a distress signal. Looks like it's coming from, well, that's weird. Jake sat up straighter, his instincts pinging like a proximity alarm. In his experience, anything that made Tommy sound less than thrilled was worth paying attention to. Define weird, Tommy. The signal's coming from a ship that's not showing up on any registry I can find. Design looks organic? Like someone grew it instead of building it. Tommy's fingers danced across his console. They're broadcasting in 17 different languages, including some dead dialects. Professional-grade translation matrix. And they just happened to break down right in our flight path? Jake's voice carried the weight of someone who'd seen too much of the galaxy to believe in coincidences. How convenient. Rosie's head appeared in the doorway, covered in grease and wearing an expression that suggested she'd rather be wrestling rabid space badgers. Let me guess. Another helpless ship in distress just waiting for some good Samaritans to come investigate? What's the betting pool on this one being pirates, slavers, or worse? Hey now, Tommy protested, his optimism apparently bulletproof. Maybe they really need help. The galaxy's a big, scary place. Plenty of legitimate reasons for a ship to break down. Jake studied the readouts on his screen. The ship was definitely not human design. That much was certain. It had the flowing, curved lines that suggested either advanced alien engineering or really committed interior decorating. The distress signal was coming through clear and strong, with what sounded like genuine panic in the voices. Grunt, what do you think? Jake called toward the cargo bay. A thoughtful grunt echoed back, followed by what sounded like agreement, then concern, then something that might have been the alien equivalent of a shrug. My thoughts exactly, Jake nodded. He'd learned to trust Grunt's instincts about these things. The alien had an uncanny ability to sense trouble, probably because his species had survived by being naturally suspicious of everything. So what's the play, Cap? Rosie asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer and wasn't thrilled about it. Jake looked at the distress signal one more time, then at his crew. Tommy was practically bouncing in his seat, ready to play hero. Rosie was calculating the odds of survival versus the odds of getting paid. Grunt was probably wondering why humans always made the obviously stupid choice. Well, gang, Jake said, downing the rest of his terrible coffee and standing up. Looks like we're about to do something incredibly stupid. Tommy set course for the distress signal. Rosie, make sure all our systems are running smooth. And somebody tell Grunt to secure the cargo bay. This is going to end badly, Rosie muttered, but she was already heading back to her station. Tommy whooped with excitement. Adventure time. Jake just smiled grimly. Yeah, adventure time. The alien ship looked even more organic up close, like someone had convinced a giant space whale to hold still long enough to install engines. Its hull rippled with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in what Jake assumed was either distress or really aggressive mood lighting. Life signs show approximately 200 beings aboard, Tommy reported, his scanner painting the mysterious vessel in cheerful blues and greens. Atmospheres compatible. No obvious weapon signatures. No obvious weapons, Rosie repeated flatly. Because nothing says trustworthy like weapons you can't detect. Jake suited up in his EVA gear, checking the seals twice. All right, people. Standard first contact protocol. Be polite, be cautious. And if anything goes sideways, remember that running away is a perfectly valid tactical option. The airlock hissed open to reveal a corridor that looked like it had been grown rather than built. Soft, curved walls glowed with a gentle phosphorescence that was actually kind of pretty, if you ignored the way it made everything look like the inside of a digestive tract. "Hello?" Jake called out, his voice echoing strangely in the organic architecture. "This is Captain Morrison of the cargo vessel Lucky Strike. We received your distress call." A figure appeared at the end of the corridor, and Jake had to admit, if this was a trap, they'd certainly invested in the presentation. The alien was humanoid but elegant, with flowing robes that seemed to shimmer with their own light. Delicate features, large expressive eyes, and an aura of refined tragedy that would make a soap opera writer weep with joy. "Oh, thank the void streams," the alien said in perfect, melodious English. "I am Princess Zara'thul of the Celestial Harmony. Our ship was attacked by raiders and we barely escaped with our lives." Tommy, who'd insisted on joining the boarding party, practically melted. "Princess? Oh wow, we'll absolutely help however we can." Jake noticed that Rosie, bringing up the rear, was running her scanner over everything and frowning. Professional paranoia was a beautiful thing. "Our propulsion systems are completely offline," Princess Zara'thul continued, leading them through corridors lined with what looked like other refugees. All beautiful, all tragic, all looking like they'd stepped out of a Renaissance painting. "We've been drifting for days. Our supplies are running low." "Don't worry, Your Highness," Tommy said, apparently having forgotten every bit of first contact training he'd ever received. "We've got plenty of supplies. Food, water, medical equipment. Whatever you need." Jake was about to suggest they start with a basic diagnostic of their systems when the corridor suddenly filled with a lot more aliens than had been there a moment ago. And these ones weren't nearly as elegant or tragic looking. Well, Princess Zara'thul said, and her voice had gone from melodious to predatory. How refreshingly naive. The elegant robes dissolved like mist, revealing combat armor that had seen serious use. The delicate princess now looked like she could bench press a shuttle and use the wreckage to pick her teeth. "Tommy," Jake said quietly, "please tell me you left our weapons systems online." Tommy said, which was not the answer Jake had been hoping for. The corridor filled with laughter that had nothing gentle about it. More aliens appeared from hidden alcoves, all armed, all looking like they'd stepped out of a nightmare instead of an art gallery. "Humans," Princess Zara'thul shook her head in amused contempt. "So predictable. So trusting. So deliciously stupid." She gestured to her crew. "Meet the Void Hunters, the most feared pirates in 12 systems. And you just volunteered to be our next cargo." Rosie's scanner finally stopped beeping. "Well, that explains the weapons signatures I couldn't detect. They're built into the ship's biological structure. Clever." "This is why we can't have nice things," Jake muttered, raising his hands as directed by the various energy weapons pointed at them. "Your ship will make an excellent addition to our fleet," the princess continued. "Your cargo will feed our crew for weeks. And you'll fetch a decent price at the slave markets on Rigel 7. Tommy looked devastated. "But you seemed so nice." "Acting classes on Dramaxia Prime," she said with a smile that showed way too many teeth. "Money well spent." As they were marched deeper into the ship, Jake caught Rosie's eye. She gave him the tiniest nod and tapped her wrist twice. Phase 1 complete. Now came the interesting part. The Void Hunter flagship was exactly what Jake expected from Galaxy-class pirates, imposing, intimidating, and decorated with the wreckage of their previous victims. Trophy cases lined the corridors, filled with artifacts from dozens of different species. A real we-kill-everything-that-moves aesthetic. Their cell was a masterwork of psychological intimidation. Transparent aluminum walls provided a perfect view of the ship's trophy room, where the preserved heads of various alien species stared at them with empty eye sockets. Charming. So, Tommy said, slumped against one wall, this is going badly. You think? Rosie was examining the cell's locking mechanism with professional interest. Though I have to admit, the craftsmanship is impressive. Quantum encrypted plasma containment with biometric failsafes. Someone spent serious money on this prison. Grunt sat in the corner, occasionally emitting thoughtful grunts that somehow managed to sound sarcastic. The cell door hissed open, and Princess Zara'thul strode in, now wearing what could only be described as full pirate regalia. Combat armor, weapons, and a cape that billowed dramatically. Someone had definitely read the manual on intimidating prisoner interrogations. Comfortable? She asked with a smile that belonged in a dental nightmare. Oh, absolutely, Jake replied. Really love what you've done with the place. Very House of Horrors chic. I'm glad you approve. You'll be here for quite some time while we decide how to best monetize your existence. She gestured to the trophy cases. Those are the heads of the last beings who tried to be clever with me. A Centaurian battle lord who thought he could intimidate me. A crystalline entity that believed it was immortal. A human merchant who insisted he was too valuable to kill. Tommy gulped audibly. See, the thing about humans, Zara'thul continued, clearly enjoying herself, is that you're so wonderfully predictable. Show you a sob story, flash some tears, and you come running like trained pets. Every single time. It's almost insulting how easy you make it. We prefer to think of it as optimistic, Tommy said weakly. Optimistic. She laughed. Yes, that's exactly what I'll put on your death certificate. Cause of death, terminal optimism. Jake leaned back against the wall, looking remarkably relaxed for someone facing imminent slavery or worse. You know, Admiral, sorry, can I call you Admiral? Princess seems a bit formal for someone who just hijacked our ship. Admiral Zara'thul will suffice. And yes, I did hijack your pathetic little cargo hauler. Though hijack implies there was some resistance. What you provided was more like enthusiastic surrender. Fair enough. So tell me, Admiral, how long have you been running this particular scam? 6 years now. 43 successful captures. Your species falls for it every time. She counted on her fingers. Medical ships, cargo haulers, even a few military escorts. All it takes is a pretty face and a sad story. Rosie looked up from her examination of the cell lock. 43 ships. That's impressive. What's your crew mortality rate? Excuse me? Well, piracy's dangerous work. Lots of variables. I'm just wondering how many of your original crew are still alive after 43 raids. Zara'thul's smile faltered slightly. What kind of question is that? A statistical one, Jake said mildly. See, Rosie here is really good with numbers. She likes to calculate odds. The odds of what? Jake checked his chronometer. Oh, I'd say about 3 more minutes. 3 minutes until what? Tommy, who had been looking progressively less devastated and more excited, grinned. Until Phase 2. Admiral Zara'thul looked between the 3 humans, and for the first time since they'd met her, she looked uncertain. What's Phase 2? Well, Jake said, standing up and stretching, that's when we stop pretending to be harmless cargo haulers. The lights on the ship flickered once, then twice, then went to emergency red. That would be the lucky strike, Rosie announced cheerfully. Seems like she's done playing dead. An explosion echoed through the ship's hull, followed by alarms and shouting in various alien languages. You see, Admiral, Jake continued conversationally, the thing about humans is that we're not nearly as predictable as you think. Sure, we fall for sob stories. But we also plan for contingencies. Another explosion. Closer this time. What did you do? Zara'thul snarled. Jake smiled, and for the first time it wasn't friendly at all. We gave you exactly what you expected. Right up until we didn't. Computer, initiate Operation Sleeping Giant, Jake said calmly, and the cell's supposedly impregnable lock clicked open like a hotel room door. Admiral Zara'thul stared as the three helpless prisoners walked out of their cage. That's impossible. Those locks are quantum encrypted. Yeah, about that, Rosie said, pulling what looked like a standard maintenance tool from her belt. Except maintenance tools didn't usually have that many blinking lights or emit that particular humming sound. Quantum encryption is adorable when you're working with standard computing. Less adorable when you're up against a military-grade AI that thinks quantum mechanics are more like quantum suggestions. The ship shuddered as another explosion rocked the hull. You see, Admiral. Jake continued, his entire demeanor shifting from harmless cargo captain to something considerably more predatory. The thing about human merchants is that we're terrible at being merchants. Always getting robbed, captured, enslaved, really embarrassing from a species pride standpoint. Tommy was no longer the cheerful navigator. His movements had become precise, economical, and his eyes were constantly scanning for threats. So about 2 years ago, Command decided to do something about it. Command? Zara'thul backed toward the door, but Grunt was already there, blocking her exit. The 8-foot alien janitor had somehow acquired combat armor and weapons that definitely hadn't been in his janitorial supplies. Human Special Operations, Jake explained. Turns out we got tired of being the galaxy's favorite victims. So we developed a new strategy. The lights flickered again, and this time they could hear weapons fire echoing through the corridors. Operation Sleeping Giant, Rosie said, checking her now obviously military-grade equipment. Step 1. Identify pirate operations targeting human shipping. Step 2. Send in bait ships crewed by volunteers who don't mind pretending to be incompetent civilians. Step 3. Tommy added with a grin that had nothing cheerful about it. Wait for the pirates to spring their trap. Step 4. Jake finished. Spring ours. The main corridor filled with smoke and the distinctive whine of human pulse weapons. Through the haze, shapes moved with the fluid precision of soldiers who'd trained for exactly this scenario. The distress signal was real, Jake continued conversationally, while Admiral Zara'thul tried to process what was happening. We've been broadcasting it for 3 weeks, waiting for someone to take the bait. We just didn't mention that it was bait for you, not us. A human soldier appeared in the doorway, wearing full combat armor and carrying enough firepower to level a small building. Area secure, Captain. Resistance was minimal. Casualties? None on our side. The Void Hunters were unprepared for coordinated resistance. Zara'thul finally found her voice. This is impossible. Humans are merchants. Traders. You're not warriors. Jake, Rosie, Tommy, and Grunt all looked at each other and laughed. Oh, Admiral, Jake said, his voice carrying a weight it hadn't possessed before. That's the most adorable thing you've said all day. Humans have been warriors since we figured out how to sharpen sticks, Rosie added. Everything else is just better equipment. Did you really think, Tommy asked, that a species could survive long enough to reach the stars without being really good at violence? Another soldier appeared. Captain, we've secured their fleet. 43 ships, just like intelligence predicted. Most of their crews surrendered once they realized what they were facing. Excellent. Signal the task force. Time for Phase 3. There's a Phase 3? Zara'thul asked weakly. Jake's smile could have frozen a star. Oh yes, see, we've been very patient, Admiral. Very understanding. But frankly, we're tired of having our shipping lanes turned into hunting grounds. The ship's intercom crackled to life. This is Admiral Rodriguez of the Human Defense Force. Void Hunter Fleet, you are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Of the ship's viewports, Zara'thul could see them. Human warships, sleek and deadly, emerging from what had appeared to be empty space. They'd been there all along, waiting. "You set us up," she whispered. "We set everyone up," Jake corrected. "Every pirate group that's been targeting human ships. Every slaver ring that thought we were easy prey. Every raider who figured humans were too soft to fight back." He leaned closer, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of an entire species' patience finally reaching its end. "Class is in session, Admiral. Today's lesson: why you should never mistake kindness for weakness." The bridge of the Void Hunter flagship had become a command center for what could only be described as the galaxy's most polite massacre. Human soldiers moved with quiet efficiency, coordinating with their fleet while the former pirates watched in stunned silence. "Status report," Jake requested, settling into the captain's chair like he'd been born to it. 41 ships have surrendered without resistance, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park, the task force's tactical officer. 2 attempted to run. The Storm Crow and the Vengeance took care of them. Casualties? Minimal. The runners didn't make it past the outer perimeter before their engines mysteriously failed. Park's tone was professionally neutral, but Jake caught the slight smile. Admiral Zara'thul, now secured in restraints that were considerably more effective than her prison cells, stared at the tactical display. "This is impossible. Our ships are faster, more maneuverable. We should have been able to scatter." "Should have, would have, could have," Rosie said cheerfully, having traded her grease-stained coveralls for a military engineer's uniform. "Except for the part where we've been tracking your fleet for 6 months and installed remote shutdown codes in all your ship's computer systems." "When? How?" "Every time you captured a human merchant vessel," Tommy explained, no longer the eager navigator but clearly a signals intelligence specialist, "you also captured their cargo, including all those wonderfully helpful spare parts and software updates." Grunt added a series of grunts that somehow managed to sound smug. "He says your species really should have learned to check gifts from humans more carefully," Jake translated. "Something about Greeks and horses, though I think that reference might be a bit lost in translation." The main viewer lit up with incoming transmissions. Ship after ship of the Void Hunter fleet was reporting the same thing. Their crews were surrendering as human boarding parties swept through with overwhelming efficiency. "This is Captain Morrison to all boarding teams," Jake announced over the comm. "Remember, we want prisoners, not casualties. These individuals will be returned to their respective home governments to face justice for their crimes." "Sir," one of the boarding team leaders reported, "the crews are asking about the rumors. They want to know if it's true." "If what's true?" "That humans are the species that wiped out the Zeloxian Empire." Jake paused, glancing at his crew. Rosie shrugged. Tommy looked uncomfortable. Grunt grunted something that sounded philosophical. "Tell them," Jake said finally, "that humans prefer not to discuss ancient history." Admiral Zara'thul went very still. "The Zeloxian Empire vanished 3,000 years ago. Every colony, every outpost, every ship. They were the most advanced military civilization in the galaxy." "War is the operative word," Jake acknowledged. "But the official records say they destroyed themselves in a civil war." "Do they really?" Jake's tone was mild, but something in his eyes made Zara'thul take an involuntary step backward. Lieutenant Commander Park cleared her throat. "Captain, we're receiving surrender requests from pirate groups in 17 systems. Word is spreading quickly." "How many groups?" "All of them, sir. Apparently the communications networks are buzzing with warnings about avoiding human shipping lanes." Jake nodded approvingly. "Phase 4, right on schedule." "There's a Phase 4? Zara'thul asked, though she seemed afraid of the answer. "Deterrence," Tommy explained. "See, we could hunt down every pirate group in the galaxy individually. But that would take time, resources, and frankly, we've got better things to do. So instead," Rosie continued, "we demonstrate what happens when you mess with human shipping. Word spreads. Suddenly, everyone remembers they have urgent business elsewhere whenever they see a human cargo hauler. The beautiful thing about reputation," Jake added, "is that it does most of the work for you." Another communication came through. Captain Morrison, this is the Mercantile Guild. We're receiving reports of a 97% drop in piracy against human vessels in the last 4 hours. Excellent. Send word to command that Operation Sleeping Giant is proceeding according to plan. Admiral Zara'thul stared at the tactical display, watching her life's work disappear as her fleet was systematically dismantled by beings she'd thought were harmless merchants. You're monsters, she whispered. Jake considered this. No, Admiral, we're humans. There's a difference, though I understand the confusion. He stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. We're just the species that learned to smile while sharpening our claws. The Admiral's quarters on the former Void Hunter flagship had been converted into a rather pleasant debriefing room. Jake had to admit, pirates knew how to live comfortably, even if their interior decorating leaned heavily toward intimidating skull motif. Admiral Zara'thul sat across from him, no longer the elegant princess or the fearsome pirate commander. Just a being who'd finally realized she'd been swimming in waters far deeper than she'd imagined. Your people will never accept this, she said, staring at the tactical reports scattered across the table. The galaxy's merchant species don't become apex predators overnight. Jake sipped his coffee, real coffee, from the Admiral's personal stash and smiled. Who said it was overnight? He activated the room's holographic display. Computer, show galactic expansion timeline, species designation, human. The display lit up with a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Small blue dots appeared, then spread outward from a single point like ink dropped in water. First contact with galactic civilization, 237 years ago, Jake narrated. Species classification, harmless merchants and explorers. More blue dots appeared, following trade routes and establishing colonies. Funny thing about humans, Admiral. We're really good at being underestimated. It's almost like we cultivate that image deliberately. The display showed human settlements growing, but slowly, peacefully. No conquered worlds, no military campaigns, just traders and colonists spreading through space. We watched the Zeloxian Empire, Jake continued conversationally. Studied them, learned from them. They were brilliant warriors, incredible tacticians, also completely convinced that military might was the only path to galactic dominance. A new section of the display highlighted the former Zeloxian space, empty systems where once a mighty empire had ruled. They made the mistake of targeting human colonies during their expansion. Thought we'd be easy victories to demonstrate their power to other species. Admiral Zara'thul leaned forward despite herself. What happened to them? They discovered that humans don't fight wars the way everyone else does. We don't conquer planets. We don't build empires. We just, Jake paused, searching for the right words. We solve problems. The display shifted, showing the gradual disappearance of Zeloxian colonies over a span of 50 years. Supply lines disrupted by accidents, computer viruses that looked like random system failures, breeding programs that reduced fertility rates without anyone noticing for generations, economic manipulations that made their military spending unsustainable. You committed genocide, Zara'thul whispered. We committed pest control, Jake corrected gently. They chose to be pests. He deactivated the display and leaned back in his chair. The thing is, Admiral, we really do prefer being merchants. Trading is profitable. Fighting is expensive. But when someone forces the issue, he shrugged. Well, we're very good at adapting our business model. This was all planned. The merchant ships, the easy targets, everything. Of course it was planned. You think we'd let our people wander around a hostile galaxy without backup? Jake's voice carried just a hint of the predator beneath the friendly merchant facade. Every helpless human cargo ship has a direct line to military command. Every naive trader is trained in combat tactics. Every innocent colony has enough hidden firepower to glass a continent. He stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars where the human fleet waited in perfect formation. The galaxy needed to learn a lesson, Admiral. We tried being nice. We tried being reasonable. but apparently some people only understand one language. Admiral Zara'thul found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "You're a monster." Jake turned back to her, and for a moment his friendly merchant mask slipped completely. What looked back at her was something ancient and patient and absolutely without mercy. "You're a monster," she screamed, pressing back against her chair. He leaned closer, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of an entire species' capacity for violence held carefully in check. "You haven't seen the real one yet." Jake straightened, and the moment passed. The friendly merchant was back, checking his chronometer and gathering up his reports. "Your ship and crew will be turned over to the appropriate authorities. You'll face trial for your crimes on 43 worlds. I suggest you cooperate fully." He headed for the door, then paused. "Oh, and Admiral? Spread the word when you reach prison. Tell everyone you meet exactly what happens when someone mistakes human kindness for human weakness." The door closed behind him with a soft hiss. In the corridor, Rosie was waiting with a tablet full of reports. "Next target?" Jake smiled, and it was the warm, friendly expression of a harmless merchant captain. "Set course for the Outer Rim. I hear there's a slaving operation that's been targeting human colonies." "Copy that, Captain." As they walked toward the bridge, Jake hummed quietly to himself. It was going to be a good day for business.